Isabella stared nervously at the board as Mr. Parker announced the final project for the year. It would be the most important grade of the semester, and each student had to partner up with someone they normally wouldn't. She had no choice but to team up with Marco, the school's star athlete and the most popular kid in school. Marco was everything Isabella wasn't: confident, outgoing, and social. The two had never spoken much, but Isabella had heard all about Marco's ability to charm everyone he met. The idea of working with him seemed like an impossible task. "Hey, Isabella," Marco said casually, flashing a bright smile. His voice caught her off guard. "You're good with numbers, right? We can totally ace this project together." Isabella felt a mix of surprise and apprehension. Despite the nervousness bubbling in her stomach, she nodded. The partnership was set, and she knew there was no turning back. Little did she know that this project would not only test her skills but her beliefs about trust, vulnerability, and love. Isabella and Marco met after school in the library to start working on their project. While Isabella dove into the math problems with ease, Marco sat back, watching her with a puzzled expression. "So, how does this stuff work?" he asked, genuinely curious but feeling out of his depth. Isabella looked at him in surprise. He had always seemed like he knew everything, and yet, here he was, struggling with basic concepts she found second nature. As they worked through the problems, Isabella explained the equations and Marco listened intently. Despite their differences, something about the way he listened made her feel appreciated. After an hour of working together, Isabella found herself smiling more than she expected. Marco wasn't as clueless as he seemed. He had a way of approaching problems from a different angle, and they made a great team. They laughed over some of the simpler mistakes Marco made, and slowly, the tension between them began to fade. Isabella realized that Marco was more than just a popular kid. He had depth, and perhaps, just perhaps, he was someone she could get along with. The following week, Isabella and Marco continued their work on the project, meeting in the library after school. With each passing session, they began to communicate more openly. Marco shared stories of his life as the school's golden boy, his struggles with keeping up appearances, and how he sometimes wished for a life outside of the spotlight. Isabella was surprised to learn that Marco's life wasn't as perfect as it seemed. She had always assumed he had it all figured out, but his vulnerability opened her eyes to a side of him she never expected. Isabella began to share more of herself too. She told Marco about her love for math, how solving equations brought her peace, and how she often felt invisible in a crowd. As they worked together, their bond grew. They were no longer just classmates. They were beginning to understand each other on a deeper level. With each conversation, Isabella realized that maybe Marco wasn't as different from her as she had once thought. A week before their project was due, Marco's confidence began to falter. Despite the time they had spent together, he still struggled with some of the more complex concepts. "I don't know if I'm cut out for this," he admitted one afternoon, his voice tinged with frustration. Isabella, sensing his vulnerability, decided to step in and help him out. "Marco, it's okay. You're trying, and that's what matters. We'll work through this together." Marco's eyes softened at her words. No one had ever encouraged him like that before, and for the first time, he felt like he wasn't alone in the challenge. They spent the next few days revisiting the material, with Isabella patiently explaining each step. Marco started to catch on, and with every breakthrough, his self-doubt started to recede. By the time the project was due, Marco was no longer just the star athlete. He had become a determined student, thanks to Isabella's guidance. The experience brought them closer, and they both realized that their partnership was about more than just finishing the project. It was about trusting each other and growing together. As the deadline for the project drew closer, Isabella and Marco began to spend more time outside of school, studying at local coffee shops and exchanging ideas. One evening, as they sat at a quiet corner table, Marco's hand brushed against Isabella's by accident. Both froze for a moment, the unexpected contact sending a rush of warmth through Isabella's body. Marco looked up at her, a flicker of something deeper in his eyes. "I didn't mean to..." "Sorry," he mumbled, pulling his hand away quickly. Isabella's heart raced, but she managed a small smile. "It's okay," she replied, her voice softer than usual. She hadn't expected the accidental touch to affect her so much, but as they continued their work, Isabella realized she was beginning to see Marco in a new light. The air between them shifted, and they began to notice little things, like the way Marco's smile made her feel less anxious, or how Isabella's thoughtful words seemed to calm Marco's usual bravado. They were no longer just partners working on a project. They were two people who had started to care about each other in ways neither had anticipated. One evening, as they were wrapping up their work, Marco turned to Isabella with an unusual look in his eyes. "Isabella, I don't know how to say this, but I think I've started to like you." His voice was hesitant, but there was sincerity in his words. Isabella's heart skipped a beat, but her mind immediately began to race. Could it be possible? Could she, the quiet girl who lived in the background, actually have feelings for someone like Marco? She stared at him for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Marco's gaze softened as he waited for her to say something. Finally, Isabella spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "I think I might feel the same way." There was a silence between them, both of them processing the gravity of the confession. But as they sat there, staring at each other in the dim light of the coffee shop, they both realized that this wasn't just about a school project anymore. This was about trust, vulnerability, and the unexpected journey of discovering love. The following week, as Isabella and Marco worked on their project in the park, something felt different between them. The air was thick with unspoken words and lingering glances. As they discussed their final ideas for the project, Isabella found herself lost in the way Marco's eyes lit up when he spoke about something he was passionate about. She had never seen this side of him before. Without thinking, she leaned in a little closer, and Marco, sensing her shift in energy, did the same. Their faces were inches apart, the world around them fading as they shared a long, electric pause. Then, almost instinctively, Marco reached out and brushed a lock of Isabella's hair behind her ear. The touch sent a spark through her, and before she could process it, their lips met. It was soft and tentative at first, both of them unsure. But then it deepened, the connection between them undeniable. When they finally pulled away, both were breathless. "Is this real?" Marco asked softly, his forehead resting against hers. Isabella, heart pounding, nodded, her mind still reeling from the unexpected moment. "I think it is," she whispered, unsure of what would happen next, but certain of one thing: this was only the beginning. As their relationship blossomed, Isabella and Marco faced the harsh realities of high school dynamics. Their once quiet and private connection became the talk of the school. Marco, known for being popular and charismatic, was suddenly the subject of ridicule from his friends, who teased him relentlessly about his relationship with the shy, bookish Isabella. They couldn't understand why he, the football star, would date someone like her. Isabella, on the other hand, found herself under scrutiny. Her classmates, who had always seen her as the quiet math geek, began whispering about her newfound relationship. Some were supportive, but others judged her for dating someone so different from herself. Despite the whispers and glances, Isabella remained resolute. She had never felt this alive, this connected to someone, and nothing, not even high school gossip, was going to take that away from her. Marco, seeing the pressure Isabella was under, made a promise. "Don't let them get to you," he said one afternoon after school. "I'm with you, and that's what matters." His words reassured her, and for the first time in her life, Isabella felt confident enough to stand tall, not because of her grades or her love for math, but because of the love and trust she had found in Marco. One weekend, Marco invited Isabella to his family's house for dinner. It was an intimidating prospect for Isabella, knowing that Marco's family was wealthy and well-known in the community. As they entered the grand home, Isabella couldn't help but feel out of place. Marco's parents were kind but distant, and Isabella felt like she didn't belong in their world. However, it was his younger sister Mia who made Isabella feel at ease. Mia was only a year younger than Isabella, and despite their different backgrounds, the two quickly hit it off. Over dinner, Mia shared stories of growing up with Marco, revealing the pressures he faced as the family's golden child. Isabella, in turn, talked about her own life, her love for math, and the quiet world she had built for herself. By the end of the evening, Isabella had gained a new perspective on Marco's life. The perfect image that everyone saw wasn't the whole picture. Marco had his own set of challenges, and Isabella realized that love wasn't just about what people saw on the outside. It was about the shared experiences, the vulnerability, and the quiet moments that created a real connection. As the days went by, Isabella and Marco grew closer. Their relationship became more than just a high school romance. It was a partnership, built on trust and mutual respect. Isabella began to feel more comfortable with Marco's world, and Marco started to understand Isabella's need for quiet time, her love for math, and the way she found peace in solving equations. But one day, Marco hit a setback. He had been struggling with a difficult decision about his future. College scouts were interested in his athletic abilities, and he had the opportunity to pursue a full scholarship. However, Marco wasn't sure if that was the path he truly wanted. He had always felt like he was living out his parents' dreams, not his own. Isabella, sensing Marco's inner turmoil, encouraged him to trust the process. "You don't have to have it all figured out right now," she said. "Sometimes the answer comes when you stop forcing it." Marco, grateful for her unwavering support, took a deep breath. He realized that, for once, he didn't have to live up to anyone's expectations but his own. And with Isabella by his side, he felt ready to explore what that might look like. The day of the final project presentation arrived. Marco and Isabella had worked tirelessly over the past few weeks, putting together their research, their findings, and their insights into a cohesive presentation. As they stood before their classmates, ready to present, Isabella felt a wave of nervousness wash over her. She had always been good with numbers and equations, but presenting in front of the class was a different challenge. Marco, sensing her anxiety, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We've got this," he whispered. When their turn came, Isabella took a deep breath and began to speak. Marco followed her lead, adding his thoughts when needed. As they spoke, they found a rhythm, their voices in sync, their connection evident to everyone in the room. The presentation went off without a hitch, and their teacher praised them for their teamwork and the quality of their work. Walking out of the classroom, Marco turned to Isabella with a grin. "See, told you we could do it." Isabella smiled back, feeling proud of not just the project but of how far they had come as a team. For the first time in a long time, Isabella felt truly fulfilled, not just academically, but emotionally. The end of the year was approaching, and with it came the school's annual spring dance. Isabella had never been one for dances or parties, preferring quiet nights at home. But Marco insisted that they attend together. "It's our first year together, and I want to celebrate it with you," he said, his voice full of excitement. On the night of the dance, Isabella nervously tried on several dresses, finally settling on a simple but elegant black one. When she saw Marco waiting for her, looking dashing in his tuxedo, her nerves melted away. He looked at her in awe, his expression softening as he took in how beautiful she looked. "You're stunning," he said, taking her hand. At the dance, Marco and Isabella shared a slow dance, their hearts beating in time to the music. For Isabella, this moment felt like a dream. She had never imagined that someone like Marco would look at her the way he did, with such warmth and admiration. As they danced, Isabella realized that this was more than just a high school romance. It was the beginning of something lasting, something real. As the year came to a close, Isabella and Marco faced the uncertainty of what came next. Isabella had been accepted into a prestigious university, and Marco had received a scholarship offer to play football at a well-known college. Their futures were ahead of them, but their paths seemed to be taking them in different directions. Isabella, torn between her dreams and her feelings for Marco, wondered how they could make their relationship work long distance. Marco, too, struggled with the idea of being apart from Isabella, especially after everything they had been through together. But one evening, as they sat on the rooftop of Marco's house, gazing at the stars, Marco took her hand and said, "We'll make it work. No matter what happens, I'll always be here, supporting you." Isabella, looking into his eyes, knew that the future was uncertain, but with Marco by her side, she felt ready to face it, knowing that true love wasn't about proximity. It was about trust, commitment, and the willingness to grow together. As summer passed and the reality of their separation loomed, Isabella and Marco found themselves struggling with the distance between them. While Marco thrived in his new college environment, making new friends and playing on the football team, Isabella felt isolated in her new academic world. The constant pressure of schoolwork and the absence of Marco weighed heavily on her. They spoke every night on the phone, but the calls were shorter, the conversations more strained. Isabella missed the simple moments they had shared, working together on math problems, their quiet walks after school, the way Marco always made her feel seen. Marco, too, missed her presence. He realized that the college life wasn't as fulfilling without her by his side. The tension finally reached its breaking point when Marco came home for the weekend. They sat down together at their usual spot in the park, surrounded by memories of their time together. Marco looked at Isabella, his eyes filled with longing. "I miss you," he admitted. "I miss us." Isabella smiled softly, her heart aching. "I miss us too," she said. "But we need to find a way to make this work. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not." After a long conversation, they both realized that their relationship needed to evolve. They couldn't rely on old routines to keep them connected. Instead, they needed to find new ways to support each other, even from afar. With renewed understanding, they decided to give each other space to grow individually, while making an effort to stay present in each other's lives. The distance, they both agreed, would not define their love. As Marco and Isabella sat under the old oak tree in the park, surrounded by the hum of the outside world, both of them felt the weight of their conversation. They had discovered the hardest truth about love: that love wasn't static. It was dynamic, evolving, and sometimes it required sacrifices and adjustments. They had learned how to love each other in proximity, but now they had to learn how to love each other across the distance. Marco looked into Isabella's eyes and said, "We've been through so much already. I don't want this to be the end. We'll figure this out, right?" Isabella nodded, her heart full of hope. "We will, Marco. We just need to trust each other more than ever." It was the trust that had brought them together, and now, it would be the trust that would keep them grounded even when life seemed to pull them in different directions. For the next few months, Isabella and Marco put in the effort to maintain their relationship, despite the physical distance between them. They set aside time for daily phone calls, but it was the small gestures that made the difference. Marco sent her care packages with notes and little gifts, reminding her that she was on his mind. Isabella, in turn, wrote long, heartfelt letters about her days, her dreams, and her struggles. They had both come to realize that love wasn't about being physically close all the time. It was about showing up for each other, even when they couldn't be together. Despite the miles between them, they had learned how to navigate the complexities of their separate lives while keeping their connection intact. Isabella's life at university was demanding, but she had learned to manage her time better. With Marco's encouragement, she became more involved in extracurricular activities and even joined a math club. She found solace in meeting people who shared her interests, but she couldn't help but miss Marco's constant presence. Marco, on the other hand, had found a balance between his commitments to football and academics. He'd begun to prioritize his personal life, often taking breaks from the intensity of sports to spend time with friends and think about his future. Still, he always made sure to check in on Isabella, supporting her as much as he could from afar. Through it all, they discovered the importance of balancing their individual ambitions with their commitment to each other. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. As they continued to adjust to their new routines, Isabella and Marco faced their first real argument. The pressure of balancing school, personal goals, and their relationship began to take a toll. Marco, feeling overwhelmed by the demands of football, snapped at Isabella during a phone call, accusing her of not understanding the pressure he was under. Isabella, hurt by his words, responded sharply, telling Marco he wasn't the only one dealing with pressure. Their conversation ended in silence, and for the first time, both of them doubted if they could continue to navigate the complexity of their relationship. The next day, Marco reached out with an apology, acknowledging that he hadn't been fair to Isabella. They talked things through, realizing that both of them were facing challenges, and that they needed to be more understanding of each other's circumstances. It was a hard lesson in communication, but it made their relationship stronger. Despite their efforts, moments of doubt crept into their minds. Isabella began to question if she could continue living her life apart from Marco. She had always imagined a future where they were together, but now that they were in different cities, the thought of spending the rest of their lives apart seemed daunting. Marco, too, struggled with similar fears. Although he loved Isabella, he began to wonder if his life in football would ultimately take him far from everything he cared about. Both of them silently wrestled with their insecurities, but neither of them voiced their doubts, not wanting to burden the other. But one evening, as Isabella sat on her dorm bed, scrolling through old pictures of the two of them, she realized something crucial. Love wasn't about eliminating doubt. It was about working through it, together. With renewed determination, she called Marco, telling him how she felt. Marco, with the same vulnerability, shared his own fears. They realized that doubt was a part of love. It didn't mean it wasn't real. Several months passed, and with the new semester underway, Marco planned a visit to Isabella's university. They had not seen each other in person for months, and the thought of reuniting both excited and terrified them. When Marco arrived at Isabella's dorm, it was as though no time had passed at all. The moment they saw each other, all the distance and doubts melted away. They shared a long, tight hug, their hearts sinking together once again. It was in that moment that both Isabella and Marco realized something. Love, trust, and fulfillment were not just about grand gestures, but about the quiet moments where they could be themselves together, even if for only a short time. The visit was short, but it reignited the spark between them. However, once Marco left, reality quickly set back in. Marco had a big game coming up, and Isabella was swamped with midterms. The stress of their academic and athletic lives started to pull them in different directions again. Isabella found herself questioning her future. Would she be able to follow her dream of becoming a mathematician if her heart was still tied to Marco? Marco, too, wondered if he could continue his football career and still be there for Isabella. Both of them faced hard choices ahead, knowing that the path they were on could lead them in different directions. They had to decide whether they were willing to sacrifice certain things for the chance at a future together. Isabella took a leap of faith. She applied for a summer internship that would take her abroad for a few months, knowing it might distance her even further from Marco. She believed that this was an important opportunity for her personal growth, but she also feared that it could create a bigger gap in their relationship. Marco, after a long conversation with his family, realized that his football career, while important, could not be the sole focus of his life. He made the decision to take a semester off from playing professionally and pursue other passions that brought him joy, including starting a business venture that he had always dreamed about. In doing so, both Isabella and Marco began to trust that taking risks for themselves wouldn't mean losing each other. Instead, it would bring them closer as they continued to support one another's dreams. Time passed, and their relationship faced more tests. With Isabella abroad and Marco focusing on his ventures, they had to learn how to maintain their connection despite being in different time zones. They had to navigate the complexities of their own paths while staying committed to each other. Through late-night calls, heartfelt letters, and surprise visits, they made it work. They understood that love wasn't a destination, but a journey, one that required patience, trust, and constant effort. By the end of Isabella's internship abroad, she had learned to balance her love for math with the confidence she had gained from her time away. Marco had launched his first successful business, which gave him the financial stability he needed to continue his studies. Both had achieved significant personal milestones, and in doing so, they realized that they could still support each other's dreams while growing individually. After Isabella returned home, she and Marco began talking about their future together in earnest. They discussed the possibility of eventually living in the same city, where they could both pursue their passions without the strain of distance. They understood that this would take time, but for the first time in their relationship, they felt certain that they could build a life together. As they continued to plan for the future, Marco and Isabella found themselves looking forward to the next chapter of their lives. They understood that life would always throw challenges their way, but they also knew that together, they were strong enough to face anything. For Isabella, Letting go of her old fears and insecurities was one of the most liberating experiences of her life. She no longer felt defined by her shyness or her love for math. Marco had helped her see that her worth wasn't tied to anyone's expectations, not even her own. Marco, too, let go of his previous need to be the golden boy. He was no longer just defined by his athletic success or the pressure of being perfect. With Isabella by his side, he embraced who he truly was. Years later, Marco surprised Isabella with a heartfelt proposal at the very park where they had first worked together on their project. Surrounded by the trees and the memories they had shared, Marco knelt down and asked Isabella to spend the rest of her life with him. With tears in her eyes, Isabella said yes, knowing that their journey was only just beginning. As they started planning their wedding, Isabella and Marco reflected on how far they had come. Their journey had not been easy, but it had been worth it. They had built a foundation of love, trust, and fulfillment that would guide them through whatever the future held. On their wedding day, surrounded by friends and family, Isabella and Marco stood hand in hand, ready to begin the rest of their lives together. As they exchanged vows, they knew that their love had evolved from the equation they once solved together into something infinitely more beautiful, an unbreakable bond built on the trust and understanding they had cultivated over the years. They had learned that love, like math, could be complex, but with the right formula, it could also be perfect. As Marco and Isabella settled into their new life together, they both realized that their individual dreams had evolved. Marco, after successfully launching his business, had expanded into the world of real estate, his entrepreneurial spirit growing stronger each day. Isabella, on the other hand, had completed her advanced degree in mathematics and landed a prestigious job as a data scientist for a leading tech company. Their careers were flourishing, but they had also come to understand the importance of balance. They had built a life where they could pursue their dreams while still making time for each other. The long-distance days, the sleepless nights, the doubts, and the struggles, those moments had made them stronger. And now, with each passing day, they knew that together, they could take on any challenge the world threw their way. One evening, as they sat on their balcony overlooking the city, Marco looked at Isabella with a smile. "I think we finally found the balance," he said. Isabella nodded, feeling content for the first time in a long while. "Yeah, I think we have." It was a quiet Friday morning when the unexpected news arrived. Isabella's company had offered her a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a leadership position overseeing a new international project. It would mean relocating to a different country for several years. The offer was everything she had ever worked for, but the thought of being away from Marco for an extended period filled her with conflicting emotions. She shared the news with Marco that evening, her heart heavy with uncertainty. "I don't know what to do, Marco," she said, her voice wavering. "This is my dream job, but it would mean living apart again for a long time." Marco listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. He could see how much this meant to her, but he also knew that it was a decision that would affect both of them. "You deserve this, Isabella," he said quietly. "I'm not going to hold you back. I've always believed in you. If this is what you want, then I'll support you. But we need to figure out how to make it work." Isabella spent days agonizing over the decision. She couldn't deny the career opportunity. It was a dream come true. But she also couldn't ignore the love and connection she shared with Marco. Would their relationship survive the strain of long distance again? Would they both find fulfillment? Or would this decision tear them apart? After much contemplation, she realized something. Love was never about holding on to someone tightly. It was about letting them go to pursue their dreams and supporting them from afar. She knew Marco would always be there for her, no matter the distance. The key was trust. And with Marco by her side, she was ready to take the leap. Isabella made her decision. "I'm going to take the job," she told Marco one evening, her heart full of hope. Marco smiled and pulled her into a tight hug. "I'm proud of you, Isabella. You deserve this. And no matter what, we'll make it work. We always have." As Isabella prepared for her move, Marco continued to build his business, and their support for each other remained unwavering. They knew that this new chapter in their lives would come with challenges, but they were no longer afraid of the unknown. They had weathered the storms before, and they would do so again. The night before Isabella's flight, they stood at the airport holding hands. "This is just another chapter in our story, Marco," Isabella said, her eyes shining. "And no matter where life takes us, we'll always find our way back to each other." "I know," Marco replied, his voice filled with conviction. "We've built something strong. It's not about distance, it's about love, and nothing can change that." They kissed one last time before she boarded the plane, knowing that the future was uncertain. But together, they could face anything. Years passed, and Isabella and Marco continued to navigate the ups and downs of their careers and personal lives. Isabella thrived in her new role, traveling the world and leading groundbreaking projects. Marco expanded his real estate ventures, and they visited each other whenever they could, always finding new ways to keep their connection strong. Eventually, Isabella's project came to a close, and she was offered a permanent position closer to home. Marco had built a life he was proud of, and Isabella knew it was time to return. When she came back, the reunion was sweeter than she could have imagined. Standing at the doorstep of their new home, Marco took her hand and whispered, "Welcome home, Isabella." Isabella smiled, tears in her eyes. "It's good to be back." Their love had been tested in countless ways, but it had only grown stronger. They had learned that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about finding fulfillment together, supporting each other's dreams, and knowing that no matter where life took them, they would always come back to each other. In the end, their love equation had found its perfect solution. And as they looked toward the future, they knew that their journey was far from over. Together, they had solved the most complex equation of all: love, trust, and fulfillment.